All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Like I said, I'm Alexis Wolstein. I'm one of your librarians here at CSU Pueblo. I'm the library liaison to all of the College of Humanities, Arts, and Social Sciences, and that includes those of you in the social work department. This is your open introduction to me and your offer to use me as your first stop for your library questions. I'm going to go over a lot of information today, and it's all going to be here in the slides. I'm going to refer to a lot of our research guides where you'll be able to find the big points and in some cases much more detail about the things I'm talking about today. And the big goal is that we're just going to kind of get you oriented with the research you're doing for social work in mind. So first and foremost, hi, this is me. I am your friendly face at the library. I'm also a self-acknowledged coffee addict. So you will often see me taking sips as we go. And if I ever get too quick because I'm a little too caffeinated, please feel free to wave your arm or drop a message into the chat. Like I said, I have markers to remind me to ask y'all for questions because it can be a little interesting talking to yourself in these Zoom bubbles. I think we've probably all experienced that so far. Um, but don't hesitate to kind of give me a notice that you need some help or that something doesn't make sense as we go, or drop something into the chat if you're attending that way. So for today, we're going to talk about a lot of things. And like I said, I'm going to give you a lot of ways to get back to this information. We're going to touch first and foremost on the library services. Campus is kind of a little different these days. So I want to make sure you have an idea of what's going on there. And then we're going to talk in broad terms about the research process. What do we mean when we say we're doing research and how that's going to affect the way that you start looking for things. I'm going to touch a little bit about on the differences between using super search, that's the big search box you see on the library's homepage, versus a database. What exactly does that mean? We toss that word around a lot. And then we'll make sure that you have some ideas on how to go about your search and some techniques there, some tips that you can refer back to later as you start diving into your research. And then finally, we'll go over our research guides and other ways to get help. So, like I said, a lot of information today, all coming to you from me, and it's all going to be here in the slides. This is a tiny URL to the slides. I'm going to go ahead and drop it into the chat for those of you who are joining us that way, and I will be sharing all of this information. Ooh, getting ahead of myself with your professors today once the recording has processed, and they'll share that with you as well. So like I said, just keep in mind that this information is going to be available to you elsewhere. This isn't the only time that you're going to be able to get a chance to absorb all this. So let's start with the first things. Is the library open? Yeah, we're open. I know that there was some confusion after the most recent mitigation plan. That's a phrase that I never expected to use as frequently as I have in the last few months. But we are open exclusively to CSU Pueblo faculty, staff, and students. So that's all of you, that's your professors, that's anybody that works at the university, the library, the LARC, that whole building is still open to you. It's Monday through Friday, 8 to 5 p.m. And then the library has some online services after those hours and on Sundays as well. The little graphic you're going to see here has phone numbers for our research desk, our circulation desk where the checkouts happen, interlibrary loan, who's going to help you get materials from other libraries. And then you'll see here you have an option to text a librarian during our regular business hours, as well as to reach out by a generic email or hit up our chat box. There's a real live librarian on the other end of that chat Monday through Friday, 8 to 6 p.m. And some nights even later. So I highly recommend taking advantage of that. It's a great way to get instant help. But keep in mind, again, friendly librarian face who works with your professors and is happy to work with you one-on-one and give you a little more focused help. So don't hesitate to use me as your first stop either. But if I'm not online and there's somebody on chat, take advantage of it. You will need to use both your Net ID and your e-account to access all of the library services right now. If you haven't already activated your Net ID, you're probably going to want to go ahead and do that. There's a link here in the slides that will take you to more information about that. Long story short, we've been juggling multiple accounts at CSU Pueblo for far too long, and we are now going to be down to just one account to rule them all by the time the spring semester starts. So in the meantime, we're transitioning between the two. NetID is going to get you access to your My Library account, requesting things for interlibrary loan, as well as renewing books and things online. Whereas your e-account will still be your point of login for your online access to databases, e-journals, all that good stuff. And like I said, there's a link here that'll take you to a document with some more information. And what I think is probably most helpful on this page, in addition to where you'll need to use it and what for, is what do those little login screens look like? So you'll see this one here asking who you are, and then the NetID will say NetID on it. Same thing with the e-account. If you need to use your e-account and that's what you use for your Blackboard, your email, you'll see that as there as well. So just keep in mind that we're juggling between these two accounts right now. And if you're having any confusion about those in the moment, it's a really great opportunity to use the library chat to get some help. We're happy to troubleshoot with you before sending you to the help desk. Floors of the library that are open, 1, 2, and 3 are open for you now, but 4 through 6 are closed. And that also includes all the library shelves. We just can't keep on, up with the cleaning that would need there if we had everybody browsing the shelves and so on and so forth. But that doesn't mean that the books are off limit to you. You can request the books, and now instead of having to go find them for yourself, one of your handy dandy librarians or library staff will go and pick up those books, bring them down to the circulation desk for you, or you can go to this link here and find some information about setting up curbside pickup. So all of this is to say that in addition to the truly overwhelming amount of online resources we have available for you, all of the books and physical resources in the library are still available. We just have to get our hands on them and get them to you. So that is a pretty broad swath on what's going on in the library right now. Before we move on, are there any questions about anything with access to the LARC or library services?
We got a question. Go ahead, Michelle.
Share it. Tell me all about it.
So Alexis, you mentioned there's services on Sundays. Is the library actually open?
No, that is a very good question. Like the rest of campus, we are Monday through Friday, 8 to 5 physically on the campus. The only time that you'll be able to get into the library, the LARC rather, that full building outside of those hours is if you have a class in the building during those hours. There are a few classes that are after 5 p.m. in the LARC. Otherwise, or Monday through Friday, 8 to 5 p.m. There, like I said, there is a librarian on in the evenings and for part of the day on Sunday, and that is entirely virtual.
So if we needed to print, most of us do work Monday through Friday, and other than taking our lunch breaks to run here and print, is there going to be an option for that?
As far as I know at this time, there has been conversation about making floor 1 accessible on the weekends, but with the campus's current plan, no. Unfortunately, that is not the case. Any other questions? I understand that that's a major inconvenience. We've been trying to work with IT to try and get some staffing on their end on the weekends, but that hasn't happened yet. All right, any other questions about building access right now before we move forward? All right. So before we actually get into the different places that you might want to do research, let's talk a little bit about what research means. This is what we call the research cycle, and the key takeaway here is that this is not a straight path. It's an iterative process, which means that you might need to repeat some of the steps as you conduct your research in order to get some of the best sources of information on your topic. So while I'll talk about how SuperSearch is a great place to start some of your research, and that there are some recommended databases for you to look at, none of these places are going to be your one-stop shop, especially at the level of research that y'all are going to be doing, you're often going to have to take your research to several different locations. Think about the different types of resources that you're looking for, and often as you find more information on your interested topic, whether it's a question or a condition or a actual government agency, something that you might be looking into, as you find more information about that, what your actual question is might change, and that's going to send you back to doing some more research again. So just keep in mind, it's not a beginning, middle, end. It's not just your assignment. You pick a topic for your assignment, you go and you do some research, and then you write the paper. Often you're going to have your assignment, you're going to look into a topic. You might find that it is way more complicated than you thought it was, or not as interesting as you thought it was, and that's totally part of the process. It just means that you might need to rethink where you're going with that search strategy. The other thing about this that you want to keep in mind is that you need to do a little bit of research to learn about your topic and have an understanding of what it is that you might be missing. So much in the same way that you might look up the definition of a word, or if you saw a pop cultural reference in a TV show, you might look it up on Wikipedia. You're often going to have to take some time and find out some more background information about your topic. And again, that might change the way that you approach your research altogether. As you go through these different resources that you find, whether they're scholarly articles or dictionaries or encyclopedias or something from your textbook, or maybe even a oral history or interview process that you went through yourself, all of these things are going to lead you to other sources. So just keep that in mind as we go along. The other thing that you'll want to kind of take some time to consider as you're starting your research is what types of sources are you looking for? We talk a lot about who is your audience, and now that's not who you're performing for, not who you're talking to, but is it one of your clients? Is it a professor for one of your courses? Is it a family member that you're trying to assist? Think about who you're looking for, and that's going to give you some idea of what you're looking for in terms of scholarly resources or popular resources. And then also consider where in the research process you are and how you're trying to inform yourself of the topic. This is where I have to stop and say, you're probably going to have requirements on how many scholarly sources you have for your projects in your higher ed career. But keep in mind that popular resources can be really useful too, because they're written for a broader audience, and can often give you a better idea of that background information than what you're going to get in the scholarly realm, where they're going to assume that you're already a minor expert in the topic. So while you might need to be getting to those scholarly sources, sometimes going and looking at the popular sources are going to be useful as well. Where you're going to look for these types of sources is all going to differ as well. So let's take a second and think about where you might be looking for background information, the scholarly sources, these popular sources. So why do you want this background information? Like I said, it's this kind of oxymoron in research where you have to know a little bit about your topic before you can actually dive into it. If you're looking, for example, research on PTSD in folks who've been involved in civil rights protests, going to be probably a timely topic coming up sooner than later. You're going to need to know what that means. What does PTSD mean in this case? What do we mean by civil rights protests, and what is happening in those occasions, so that we have a better understanding of what that is going to lead us to. So good resources here include encyclopedias, books, textbooks, manuals, things that give you definitions. It's also going to help you figure out those important keywords and significant dates, related topics that are going to help you expand your research. Once you have a little bit of an idea of the background information on topic, you might want to start looking into primary sources. If you've ever done research in a history course or something along those lines, you've probably heard of this idea of primary sources a lot. It's the things that we think of that are coming from an historic event, but it's also the things that are coming from the point of research. So where y'all are coming from, this might mean, like I said, interviews that you've done firsthand, oral histories, original research or case studies done on the ground in your field. But that also might include some of the things we also think about in terms of more historic research, like diaries or artifacts from an event. It really depends on what the topic you're researching is. But you need to keep in mind that you want to look at all of these to show that you've not just gotten the definitions and then made some assumptions, but you want to make sure that you're actually looking to see what other people have done, look at the original evidence, and see if you agree with their interpretations, because you might not always. Not every scholar is beyond reproach, and research can change and flex a lot as we learn more things. And then finally, you want to make sure you're adding something new to a topic. Otherwise, you're kind of just writing a book report. You're just summarizing things. How are you adding to this topic? Are you doing your own case study? Are you doing your own field work? Are you drawing a new conclusion looking at theoretical research? This is why you need to look at all of these different types of sources. And as you start becoming a minor expert in your topic, getting background information, looking at primary sources, this is when those scholarly sources come into play. Um, Big thing to keep in mind with scholarly sources, they're not just articles in peer-reviewed journals. We get really hung up on, I need articles, I need them from peer-reviewed journals, I need them to be timely, and all that's very important. But that's not the only scholarly sources out there. Books are often very scholarly depending on who's writing them. It really just means that they're being written by um, a historian or a researcher or other kind of scholar, and that they're an expert, that they've done the research, they're pulling the background information for you. And you'll see here, I use the example of historians, but it's the same thing with pretty much any type of scholar. If you are looking at scholarly articles, the person writing on that has been writing about it a lot more often than not. It's going to be much more narrow than a book looking at the topic would be. But it is going to be useful for seeing how the other scholars and the other researchers in your field have looked at the evidence, how they've formulated theories, how they've drawn conclusions. But, and this is a big but, one of the most useful things about these scholarly articles is its list of references. Because if you find one good scholarly article on your topic, they've already had to do a lot of that background research. They've already had to find a lot of that context. They're going through and they're finding primary sources, studies that they're citing. And then you, as a researcher, are building on that. So look at those references. They're going to lead you to other sources. This is part of that iterative process, right? They're going to lead you to other references, and often you're going to find more than enough sources on whatever topic you're looking at just by looking at the references cited in one other scholarly source, be it a book, be it an article, be it a conference presentation that you find online. Always, always, always look at those references, bibliographies, works cited. It's going to lead you to a sometimes veritable treasure trove of resources. All right. Lots of information. I'm going to pause for any questions. I imagine that some of this is going to be review to some of y'all from undergraduate work. Some of it might have sound familiar, but using other words, other descriptions. I'm going to pause for a second and take a drink here. And if there's any questions, please feel free to raise your hand or drop them into the chat. If not, we'll move on. All right, let's move on. So let's talk about the actual tools you're going to use to find your research. Couple big things at play here. Notice I said tools, right? These are tools to help you find things. Oh, we got chat beeping. Can we slow it down a little bit? Yes, I will be happy to. Thank you for that. Super Search is the search box that you're going to see on the library's homepage. If you have done any research at the library before, you've likely seen this. If you've gone to see if we have a book in stock for you to check out, or you're trying to find an article that you found in the reference, this is likely the place you started. And it's a good place for that because it does look at a wide variety of resources, as well as a selection of things from several of our databases and the things that the library itself owns. Let's think a little bit more about what Super Search actually is. So it's a discovery tool. Super Search is not a database itself. It's not the actual collection of resources. It's the tool that you're going to use to look at what does the library own about this topic, this keyword that I'm putting in, what might be some of the results from some of the databases there. What can I find across a wide collection of different types of resources? So popular and scholarly, uh, online and print, things that we have in our collection primarily. And it's also going to give you a lot of filters that you can use to refine your search. But again, it's not the content itself, it's the tool that you're using to search for the content. Think about Google, right? Google isn't the actual collection of everything you're finding on the World Wide Web. Google is the tool you're using to search for these things. Super search is basically the same sort of idea, but for the CSU Pueblo Library's website. Now, again, I'll emphasize, it looks across quite a few of our databases. I will say several, but not all of them. It is going to look at scholarly databases that cover a wide variety of topics because it's going to pull things from a lot of different disciplines in the hopes to find things that are relevant to what you're searching. But only a fraction of the library's electronic resources show up in Super Search. There are things that just won't be there if that's the only tool that you're using. And again, this is why we want to make sure to think about research as a circle that we kind of take steps back through and repeat again and again. And then lastly, I need to mention one more time, it's got really helpful filters that are going to allow you to filter your results, refine your search, and discover a little bit more about what you're seeing there. Whereas the databases are going to be collections of more specialized resources that often you're going to need to access directly through our list of databases. What you see here is a list of the best bets for social work, and we'll go into all of these in a little more depth here later in the presentation. But the key thing to remember is that not all of these databases are going to show up in Super Search, and often they're going to be much more specialized. So databases are going to have subject-specific collections of scholarly articles or other types of publications, and they're going to have them grouped together by a certain subject. That's why a lot of our databases are going to be specific to certain types of research. But guess what? Y'all in social work, your research crosses all sorts of disciplines. So while I will point out some of the best ones for social work, in my experience, depending on the way that you're approaching your research, there might be other resources that are going to be even better fits. In addition to having content that's more specialized, they'll have filters that are more specialized to the type of research that you're doing. And again, almost all of these are going to have items that are available to you online. And so you want to make sure that you're accessing them through the library. Otherwise, you're not going to get prompted to use your e-account and password to get access to these, and eventually your net ID. The big thing here to remember is that you want to make sure you're getting access to the things the library is paying for on your behalf. You should never, ever, ever pay for anything that you're trying to get for your research without first checking to see if the library has access to it, or if we can get access to it through another library, an interlibrary loan. If you have any questions about these services, the chat again is a great option, or you can feel free to reach out to me directly. But think of the library as your login screen to get access to all of these free things. Now, whether you realize it or not, most of you probably have access, probably subscribe to a database or two on your own without having to deal with the library. Everybody in the room subscribe to a Netflix or a Hulu, one of those types of services? Some nods, maybe? When you subscribe to something
Yes,
like a
ma'am.
Netflix or Hulu or the New York Times, you're subscribing to their database. And much in the same way that you can't just go to Google and type in Avengers Endgame and be able to stream the movie right there and then, you can't just type in the name of an article and expect to have access to it right away. You're going to go to the library's website so that you're going to be asked to log in, just like you would go to Netflix or Disney Plus or whoever has access to the Marvel movies now, and pay them money so that you can log in and stream it there. It's the same idea here. We have a list of all of our databases available to you at the databases A to Z link, where you can search by subject, by type, or by the title. And we'll go into a little more depth about this here shortly. But there's a lot of different databases, like I said, that'll be useful to y'all. Social services abstracts, Soc Index, they're both sociology, social work focused types of databases. whereas Psych Info is going to be more psychology based. ERIC is an educational database, but it's going to be very useful if you're doing research into children populations. These are all going to be different kinds of specialized resources that you can go to find things in those collections. Note here, I have a Psych Info self-paced tutorial available, and I will be sharing that with your professors after today's session, along with the links to this video recording of today's session and everything else that I'm talking about. It is a really powerful database that I do recommend getting familiar with. All right. Any questions about the difference between super search or a database before we actually kind of dive into these guys? Okay. So let's try search and super search. All of this was kind of, I'm giving you a lot of information. Let's actually see how it goes and works. All right, let's move over to screens. And here we have the CSU Pueblo Library's website. We're just csupueblo.edu/library. You'll find us linked on the left-hand side of your Blackboard courses. And we're also here under academics, University Library. Like I said, this is where you want to start your searching to ensure that you're going to see everything that you have access to. Now, search box looks a little funky because I'm using my screen a little smaller than usual so I can see the classrooms here. But you'll see that we have the super search box in the middle of the screen. There is the option to go to an advanced search, as well as links to our research guides, which we'll talk a bit more about here in a few, and as well as a link to all of those different databases. This is also where you can see our most recent hours and log into your library account if you need to renew items. And then down here below, you'll see that link to chat with a librarian. And if there was a librarian on duty right now, we could click on this and their screen here would connect us with a real live librarian to help you out. Let's go ahead and try a search. Now, super search, if I just pop something in here to the box on the library homepage, is going to do what's called a keyword search. That's basically what you get when you pop something into any search engine. It's going to look for whatever terms, title, whatever you put in there in a very broad way. It'll look for those words across the actual substance of the articles and the titles and the authors. So you can pop whatever you like in here just to see what's available. I can say I'm looking for, in a broad sense, just things about anxiety. Click search and see what happens. Now I am going to try and readjust this window a little bit. Bear with me for a moment. There we go. That's much better. All right. So, it is now time for a librarian to be on duty on Sunday. Yay. So you'll see that this is going to pop up over and over again as we work through today. You don't need a librarian, so I'm going to say no thanks. But again, if we needed to chat with somebody for some help, we could click on the orange box here at the bottom. Now, as I said, Super Search is going to prioritize academic resources as well as books, and is going to look for what it can find to be the most relevant search results. We have 1.8 million search results just by looking at anxiety. Probably need to rethink what other aspects of anxiety that we're looking at. And you can also see by going to someplace where they're going to specialize in psychological surveys or something like that, if that's what you're looking for, may be a little more useful. But the other thing that I want to make sure you see here are these filters. Now, in Super Search, they're called filters. Other databases will call them limiters. Other places will call them refining tools. You can see these in everything from Google's advanced search. You'll see variations about them in pretty much every database that you go to. You'll also see something kind of familiar if you're searching for things in shopping online. Let's think of the way that if you were shopping for shoes on Zappos, you could refine your search by the size of shoe that you're looking at. It's the reason why you want to have an idea of what you're looking for, so you can say, for example, I only want to find the resources that are available to me online. I only want to find those peer-reviewed journals. I want to be able to limit by my source type, so I only want to find articles, or maybe I'm looking for a newspaper so I can find timely news updates on my topic. Other really helpful refining tools that you'll see here and Super Search and elsewhere in other databases is the publication date. I highly recommend limiting your search to the last 5 years, unless you're looking at a historical approach of a topic. And then finally, subject. Now, subject means that this is what is listed in that resource as the focus of that the topic, the main idea of that article, that book, whatever it may be. Like I said, we did a keyword search, so we're going to get some things that may seem tangentially related, but I can go into the subject here and use all of these different limiters to have, again, a much more refined result. So if I'm looking at anxiety and its relation to depression amongst teenaged females and the human population, I can go in here and change my subjects very, very easily to add female, depression, mental health if I want. Perhaps I'm interested in the psychiatric approach, or perhaps I'm more interested in children. These are all ways that I can refine my search, but also see what type of results that I'm finding. So I'm going to go ahead and pick a couple of those subject terms. I'm going to go to the last 5 years for my search publication date. And then I'm going to say that I only want things that are available to me online from peer-reviewed journals. And I'm looking for articles in this case, not all the other stuff that I might find there, like book reviews and conference proceedings. Once I apply these filters, my 1.8 million results are now down to 111,000, much, much more manageable. You'll see that the content of these titles has changed dramatically. I'm now only finding ones that are from peer-reviewed journals, ones that have full text available. And I see all of my filters here on the left. I point this out because you might be going through these articles and find that, depression is muddying my results and isn't very helpful. I don't want to redo my entire search. You can go through and X this one out and remove it from your search. Or maybe you're finding that you're not as much looking at anxiety as much as you're looking at stress and post-traumatic stress disorder. I could go through and eliminate some of these topics, or I could lock all of my filters, go to the top and change my search to a different keyword. And then my search results are going to be the same filtered results, but now my keyword search is PTSD instead of anxiety. So this is just an example of how Super Search works. And we're seeing that maybe some of these roles might be what we're looking for, because we're looking for terms that are pretty much related to psychology, sociology, these types of topics. But I could go through again and use advanced search to have more control. We'll go over this a little more in search techniques. But the thing to take away here is that what you try, it's not going to break Super Search. It's not going to break the database that you're looking at. These are all, again, tools that are going to help you refine the results that you're looking at to get to the most relevant search for your research. So they're not going to tell you what's the best article on PTSD for your topic, but they are going to give you the tools to refine your results so that you're finding the things that are most in line with what you're hoping to find. The other thing to remember about these search filters is that they're not unique to Super Search. You're going to see similar things across a lot of different databases. Take advantage of them. All right. Let's take a look at one of these articles just very quickly to point out a couple more of the tools here. Once I click on that title, this is where I'm going to see where I can get my online access. In this case, I have access to the database Elsevier. If I didn't have any access to the article, I could then click on this interlibrary loan link to request it through there. As I scroll down through the record, I'll see the author, the various subjects related with this article. So I can get a really good idea in this case what the article might be about by looking at all of its different subjects. It's even including the different testing methods that they used, in this case, surveys and questionnaires. There'll typically be a description or an abstract to let you know a little bit more about it. And then finally at the bottom are very, very important tools. If you've ever seen me in another class, you've heard me mention these tools, and that's because they're honestly some of the most important. First and foremost is the permalink. A permalink is exactly what it sounds like. It's a permanent link back to this page where you can get access to the article. It is going to have that Colorado State Pueblo proxy link so that you will be prompted to log in to get the access. Whereas this up here in the URL is going to be a dead link, usually within a matter of an hour. So do not copy paste that and save it someplace with the idea of being able to get back to this page. It's not going to work. Take that permalink, or even better, click on citation and get a citation for the article. Because even if you don't have a link back to this page, a citation will have all the information you need to find it again. And guess what? This is actually a pretty decent citation generator. And you can pick your citation style, APA, MLA, Chicago. These are going to do a lot of the work for you. You have a citation here, and then you just have to confirm that it's correct instead of having to do all this formatting on your own. Now, I'm going to very briefly point out the link here to EndNote. EndNote is a citation management tool that you get free access to, and is built into a lot of these databases. It's a tool that allows you to save and organize citations, and then use those citations that you've saved and organized to create bibliographies. If you'd like some more information about that, we have help information in our citation guide that I'll point out, and I'm also happy to meet with you one-on-one on that topic. But keep in mind, you're going to have a lot of tools to help you with your research built into each of these item records, as well as to a lot of information about each of these individual articles or books that you find, that in addition to letting you know more about what the actual content of the article is going to be, can help lead you to other search terms and other articles that will help you get the most out of your research. All right. Any questions in general about Super Search? I'm kind of working under the assumption that some of you have probably had some exposure to this before. And if any of this moved, again, way too quickly for you, I'm happy to meet with you one-on-one with your research topic in hand and work with you that way. Let me see, you got a question in the chat. Oh, I appreciate it. Great. Good. Any other questions before we move forward?
Hold on, we got a
Thank you.
question.
I was just asking if on every article that you look through from the super search, if you scroll down, those options will be there to cite.
Yes, very good question. In that item record, that's what we call that page that you get to after you click on the article and has all that extra information. Those tools will be at the bottom of every item record for everything you find in Super Search. That's one of the other nice things about using Super Search, is that you know those tools are going to be built in. But again, when we'll take a look at another database here before the day is over, you'll see these tools in pretty much every database that you search in. If you, for example, have credentials to other libraries, maybe you're taking a class at the community college, or you have a public library card, guess what? Those little links for citations and permalinks, they're going to be in all of those records. Very, very good question. If any of y'all ever talk to a career counselor and they talk about transferable skills, things that you can use across a bunch of different areas, these are transferable skills. Everything I'm talking about is not just related to Super Search, but you'll see how they repeat themselves in other databases. Excellent question. Anything else before we move forward?
We got a couple here, Michelle
Yeah.
and then Annika. Michelle?
How long does it typically take for an interlibrary loan to come through?
Professor, could you repeat that question for me? I couldn't quite hear it.
Yes, how long does the interlibrary loan take?
Interlibrary loan. Oh, how long does it take? That's a good question. Interlibrary loan is functioning, and it depends, and how long it takes depends on if you're looking for a physical item or a digital item. I will say our interlibrary loan guy is like a ninja and is so committed and has all of these like amazing inroads to make requests. One of the best interlibrary loan librarians I've ever worked with. But what interlibrary loan entails is him looking into other schools and other databases, other libraries to see who has it and who might be able to lend it. So sometimes it's super quick. Sometimes I'll make a request for an article that's online and I'll have it in my inbox by the end of the day. Sometimes it can take 3 to 5 business days, and that's what I always tell people to plan on just in case. But there is always the rare chance too that we won't be able to get access to it. That happens very rarely when it comes to articles in particular, but books right now can be a little bit iffier, and because it depends on the access that other libraries are granted. Everybody has kind of different policies right now with COVID in place. So give yourself at least 3 business days. You'll see that request in for your interlibrary loan in there, and then you can always feel free to call interlibrary loan or drop them an email, and they'll give you an update. But it does take a little bit of actual human effort to do that. So keep that in mind. It's not like you click on the link and then it automatically goes out and an algorithm pulls it in. It's a very good question.
We got another one, Alexis.
Yes, please.
So my question was with college, for sure our classes are moving to APA 7. Is that something that you guys will be updating for the citations sooner than later?
Yes, so that's another very good question. If we look in the records here, if we go back down and look at that cite button, you'll see in the library's catalog right now, it has APA 6th edition built in. Other databases will have APA 7th edition. It really is if you copy this, and then again, I'm telling you, no matter how good these are, you want to make sure you compare them with a citation guide. If you compare this to the APA 7th edition citation, you're actually going to be taking information out. So this will give you more information than you need, and then you can again use use a citation guide to help you out there. I wouldn't recommend taking any of these at face play. Oh gosh, I'm losing words. I wouldn't take any of these as 100% correct 100% of the time. They're way better than they were when I was in grad school, but they are a starting point that's just going to save you a good bit of time in formatting. But 7th edition APA has less information in it than the APA 6th edition, so if anything, you'll be editing your citation down. Any other questions before we move forward? Great questions, folks. All right. Let's go back to the slides and we'll move on to the next one. All right. So you want to start a super search to see what's out there. You want to use the library's resources so you're not paying for things that you don't have to. And we talked a little bit about how you're going to have to kind of go back and forth and try all of these things a couple times maybe to find exactly what it is that you need for your research. So let's talk a little bit about actual search techniques. I am going to click us over to a page on search techniques in our research tips and tricks guides. This is going to be linked in the slides, and it's one of the many research guides that you have available to you. Yes, I am going to drop a link to all the databases here in the chat just really quickly so everyone can see where that is. And I'll walk through all of this with everything before we finish. Don't worry, like I said, all of this is in the research guides and all of this is linked in the slides. My main concern is that you have seen it and you have a general idea of what it does so that when you go back and actually start doing the research, you can refer to this information and have at least an idea of where to start before you drop me an email and say, hey, Alexis, can we meet? And I'll say yes, and we'll work it out. All right, so this is in our research tips and tricks guide, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's kind of a place where if you aren't sure about how to use the database or if you need help with any general super search topics, all of this is going to be there. And it's also going to just provide some general ideas and instructions on how to take advantage, again, of these tools. So where should you begin your search? Well, this is kind of where you have to bring in your knowledge. This is why you need to have a little bit of a background information on your topic. You want to think about one, what is your topic? So what are you researching? Am I researching PTSD in veterans coming back to school after on the GI Bill? Am I looking at how I can use anti-racism resources to help students in high schools deal with microaggressions? There's a million different things that you might be researching, especially depending on which realm of social work you go into. And then once you have a general topic, that's when you want to consider, what is the question that I'm trying to answer, right? Um, if you just have a topic and you just go out there without a question in mind, that's when you're just giving a narrative. You're making that book report. You're just defining something and giving some more information on it. The question that you're answering, that's what you're adding to this conversation. Keywords and phrases. These are the different things that you're going to be popping into those search boxes to see what comes out there. Is it anxiety? Is it PTSD? Is it a certain population? Are you looking for things that are going to be using certain testing measures like surveys or questionnaires? These are all things that you need to think about as the pieces of your research topic, and these are going to give you an idea of where you're going to be searching as well. And then something that I think is one of the most important bits, you want to brainstorm the related and alternate ideas around these topics. So anxiety is a big, big topic. We saw that. We had almost 1.2 million results just in SuperSearch. That was before going to any specialty databases. But there's also narrower topics within anxiety as a diagnosable condition. There's related topics that might be causing anxiety or might happen in conjunction with anxiety. If you have anxiety, you might be depressed. They kind of work hand in hand. There might be alternate spellings. There might be other ways of approaching your topic depending on the discipline. The way that a psychologist is going to refer to a 13-year-old male might be different than the way that a social worker might refer to a 13-year-old male. So just keep in mind that if there is more than one discipline that you're going to be dipping your toe into with your topic, you might want to think of the different ways that they talk about that. And with populations, that can be especially complicated. Think about the way that we talk about Chicano folks versus Latinx folks versus Indigenous folks, and all of these might have relations to your topic. So think about these different things that might connect, and one of the ways to figure out what those connections might be is to do that background information research. And then what subject area or areas does your topic fall under? That's where you kind of want to take that time and say, is this psychological research? Is this human services? Is this any of those big, broad topics? What is the big focus of your research? Once you have those in mind, this is where you're going to start doing your research. You can start with SuperSearch like we discussed, or you can go to that A to Z list of databases and look for those more specialized resources. I always recommend starting with SuperSearch, seeing what's out there. It's kind of like taking a big net and throwing out and seeing what fish you catch, and then you can use those refining tools to throw out the ones that don't seem as relevant. But from there, once you have a better idea of your topic and where you might need to go to get that specialized research, that's when those databases are going to be useful. And we'll take a look at those here in just a minute. Now, part of research is testing and refining. I might think that I have the perfect search terms, but then I try them out and they're not getting the results that I want. I'm going to have to try some of those synonyms, those alternative phrasings, look at the different spellings and the different approaches. And then as I use those tools on the left of my database results, whether it's from the search anything discovery tool or going to a specific database, those are going to help me figure out more and more about how I want to refine my search, or in some cases, how I want to broaden my search, because maybe I'm only finding things about too specific of a population. And then I'm just going to very briefly point out these advanced search techniques. Now, these are going to be very useful as you get deeper into your research, as you're doing your graduate work and you become very specialized, if you're going to start writing a thesis, a dissertation, any of that kind of good stuff. Again, these are understanding how the tools that you're using works. So some of these might be very familiar to any of you. If you've ever tried using quotation marks in Google, it's a way of looping things together as a phrase. So you're not just looking for sports injury, mass incarceration, solar power, any of these words as individual words, but as a phrase. Truncation and wildcards allows you to search for a word in a truncated manner, and that can be very helpful for things like feminism, feminist. If I put an FEM in a little asterisk, it will look for anything that starts with that. In this case, putting in ROB with a little asterisk gets me robotics, robbery, and Robespierre. Might not be helpful. And then there's also the ways that you can combine and connect these words. These and or nots are called Boolean operators. They're a way that you're telling the database to search for your terms, either linking them together with and, looking for variations on a term with or omitting something with not. So I'm not going to go too in depth into any of these today. I want to point them out and let you see that there's more information here in the research tips and tricks guide so that you can try them out as you go through, because like a lot of things, this is really the best way to learn them is just to try them out yourself. So as you try them out and you're like, this doesn't make any sense, or I'm not finding the things I'm hoping to find, that's when you want to reach out and make an appointment or drop me an email and we'll work through it together. But just keep in mind that all of these kind of little trips, these advanced search techniques are here for you. And I wholly believe that once you start doing some research on your topic and do those initial searches, that you'll be more than capable to jump up to the level of these advanced searches as well. There's also some more information about brainstorming keywords. There's some information here about building a concept table, which can help with more complicated research topics. And then some information about documenting your searches and keeping track of your information. So again, this is all in the research tips and tricks guys, along with a lot of other information. And we're actually gonna like take a look and see how all this stuff works here momentarily. So we looked at that. Any questions about that broad information there before we move into some of the other research guides? And then we will dive in and see how some of this works in a specific database. And then I'm happy to spend the rest of the session kind of looking at searches and pointing things out. All right. Okay. So in addition to the research tips and tricks guides, we have a research guide with social work specifically in mind. I'm going to point that out again here momentarily. We have guides, like I said, on citation. All of this is, again, linked here in the slides. There is an APA guide, there's an MLA guide, there's a Chicago guide, and all of those are going to have a lot more information and examples on that you can use to check your citations. As I mentioned, you do get free access to the online version of EndNote. If you'd like some more information about keeping track of all your resources, all of your citations, and using those tools, let me know. There's also a lot of just great help tutorials online that you can find just by Googling. And then I would be remiss if I didn't point out that you have not just a librarian who's going to help you track down the information in the citation and make sure you're using the right citation style, but we do have the online writing lab, the actual CSUP's Writing Center. They are such an amazing resource. They will go over your citations with you, make sure that they're formatted properly, make sure that your references, your bibliography is formatted correctly, that you're doing your paraphrasing, all of that good stuff. Can't recommend them enough. So feel free to reach out to me if you're not sure what you're citing or if you need some help knowing what style to use. But if you need somebody to look at your citations or look at your stuff, make sure it's formatted correctly, take advantage of the online writing lab. They're an amazing resource. And then, like I said, y'all in social work, you do really interesting research that kind of branches out into a lot of different areas. So while we'll look at the social work research guide and some of the databases we recommend there, this might not be the end-all be-all resource for you. You might want to look at our resources for Chicano studies, depending on what you're doing. You might want to look at the nursing and psychology resources if you're looking at things from a more medical perspective. Maybe you are doing the type of research that needs help with government documents, which is a whole kind of weird school in and of itself. We have different research guides that will help you with all of those. And so what I really like to emphasize that we have a lot of stuff that you can use to help yourself, because I'm that type of person. I like to try and help myself first. You have somebody who will help you too. So try it out, see what you can find. But as one of my wonderful colleagues at CSU Pueblo has told me multiple times, if you spend more than 15 minutes looking at something, getting frustrated, and you don't know where to go, reach out for help. All right? Never make yourself struggle more than that. Okay. Any questions before we actually dive into another database. Okay. I'm going to go back to the library's homepage and point out that databases link here underneath the super search box. If I click here, this will take me to a listing of all of the different databases that the library subscribes to. You'll see that the chat with a librarian box is currently green because one of my colleagues is available for you, not me, because I'm here with y'all. But you'll see here that there are over 400 databases that the library subscribes to, that we have all of them listed on an A to Z list here for you, as well as explanations of what the different types of databases you might find in here. So of course, academic scholarly ones are going to take the primary real estate here because we are a university library and that's a lot of the research you do, but there are databases that specialize in encyclopedias, dictionaries, handbooks, those things you need for background information, government resources, popular resources, and so on. At the top of this databases page, you'll see that I can browse by subject. So I can say I want to see the databases that are best for biology or Chicano studies, or I just want to see the citation guides. I can also look by type if I want to find those background sources, if I'm looking for primary sources, if I'm looking for government sources, scholarly sources, so on and so forth. I can search for both of those in the same search. So if I wanted all of the academic scholarly resources that were listed as best for social work, I could do that. Or if I know I'm looking for a specific database, like our database that holds all of the theses and dissertations, I can search for it that way. So I'm going to point out PsycInfo to start with today. So I'm going to click on P because I know that that's what it starts with. I'm going to scroll down until I find PsycInfo. And it's right here. Now, every one of the databases is going to have a basic description of what you can expect to find there. PsycInfo provides indexing abstracts for over 1 million articles across a wide variety of psychology and sociology databases. And it also has really specialized filtering tools, which is one of the reasons why I want to point it out to you today. If there is any special account that's needed for the database that you have to create ahead of time, that will be listed here in this description. So I'm going to go ahead and click on PsycInfo, and that's going to direct me to log in with my e-account and password. Now notice it says e-account here, not NetID. And this is what you would use to log into Blackboard, your email address, all that kind of stuff. Excuse me while I try and remember which one of my many, many passwords this one is. It was not that one. We're all human, right? Too many passwords. All right. And this is going to direct me directly into the database PsycInfo. Now I can see where I am. And if you guys will bear with me for just a moment, I'm going to resize this. There we go. I can see that I'm searching in the APA PsycInfo database. This is a database that's owned by EBSCOhost, which is a company that designs the different tools that you search different databases are with. So EBSCOhost, ProQuest, these aren't the actual databases. They're much like SuperSearch, are the tools that we use to search the databases. This will look very familiar to you if you've used any other EBSCOhost databases, but it's also very similar to what you would see in the advanced search on SuperSearch. I can search for different phrases here. I default to a keyword search, but I can then go in and say I'm looking for a title, an author, or doing a subject search. But because this is psychology focused, it also has things like age group that I can search by, as well as mesh headings. This is my linking terms here that'll say I'm looking for these terms together, either or eliminating a term. Let's try one of these searches. You can see that I've done quite a bit of searching here. We had special needs and adoption. That was a student I was helping the other day. And again, I could say I want PTSD and anxiety. Do a search. And again, because PsycInfo is looking for a specialized selection of resources, I already know kind of what I'm going to find, and that they're going to be more aligned with this type of research than, say, what I might find in magazines or newspapers. If we look here on the left, you're going to see that I have refining tools as opposed to filters, but they're going to work very, very similarly. I can see that I can limit to local holdings, which means things that I have access to. So that's like that online access full text link. Oh, it's updating my search. That's exciting. There we go. Let's try again. Oh, and I limited it to local holdings. I tapped and didn't even realize I did it. I can work with my publication dates like I had before. So I can say I want that 2015 window. I want that linked full text. And whereas Super Search would let me put in all of my refinings and then click search, this one is just adding them as we go. Much like we had in Super Search, you can see all of my limiters are starting to show up here at the top of my search. As I scroll down though, you'll notice I have that subject, but because this has a medical approach, a psychology approach, I also can limit by major heading. I can go in as well and see language, just like I could in Super Search. But again, because this is psychology and I'm looking at things like certain ages and certain groups and methodologies, these are going to be filters that I have available in the database that aren't available in others. So I can limit by age here in a way that I couldn't elsewhere. I can also limit by gender. If I scroll down, I can also go in and say what tests and measures were used here. So if I'm trying to find other examples that have used a checklist in their research for PTSD or anxiety, I can add that to my search results. And now I'm down to just 18 different articles that all are using those limiters that I had in my refining tools. Now, just like I would with my results in Super Search, I want to click on that title. That'll take me to that record page. Again, it's going to look a little different, but lo and behold, guess what? Here's our permalink. Here's our site button. Here is a way to connect to our Google Drive if that's something you want to use. Let's go ahead and take a look at the site button here in PsycInfo. Now you'll see that the citation styles that it offered me are a little bit different because it's thinking about what folks in psychology might need. But if I scroll down, in addition to AMA, I'm going to have the most recent APA. And PsycInfo is actually associated with the APA, so you can rely on the fact that it's going to be the most up-to-date there. One other tool that I really want to point out in PsycInfo before we move on is this thesaurus tool here as well. If we click on this, this will link us to the APA Thesaurus of Psychological Index Terms. This can be really helpful if you're trying to figure out what other terminology is being used on the keywords and phrases that you're interested in. So I could go and say like, well, if I'm talking about anxiety, what is the related terms? What is the term that is actually being used as the major heading by the APA? I click browse. You'll see all of the related major headings here in blue. So anxiety, anxiety disorders, anxiety management. I can click here to explode each of these and see all of the subtopics. I can make this a major topic. And again, I'm not going to go deeply into this, and I'm going to share with all of you a link to a self-paced PsycInfo tutorial so you can make the most use of this tool. But then I can go through and use these to build my own search in the database in a way that I wasn't going to be able to in other databases, because this is set up specifically with psychology research in mind. So, like I said, PsycInfo is very, very powerful. It's a really useful tool, and I do have a self-paced tutorial that I will share with all of y'all if you want some more information on that. So I'm going to go back to that A to Z databases list. I'm going to clear out and say I want to see the best databases for social work. And you'll see that in addition to PsycInfo, social services abstracts is listed here, Social Index. These are all, again, suggestions on where you might want to start your searching, but depending on what it is that you want to look for, look at the other databases and see what might be related. And if you need some suggestions on other databases to look at, that is one of the best places where you can contact your librarian. So again, we'll just click on Social Index in this case. This is from core sociology journals. And again, this is also a database owned and managed by EBSCOhost. So even though we're searching a source index, we are going to find that this tool works very, very similarly. While it doesn't have the APA PsycInfo thesaurus, it does have subject terms that you can search and use to help with your searches. So there's a ton of tools, not just available for you within SuperSearch, but within all of these different databases. And because they're so specialized on what they're looking for, so are the tools. Again, this is where I tell you to just get in there, try them out, and then if things don't make sense or there's things you have questions about, hit me up. All right. Gonna head back over to the slides here. Questions? Oh, chat is dinging. All right, so what exactly are cited references? That can mean a couple different things. If you're talking about your references cited, these are the things that you are using to build your research on, the things you're quoting, the things that you go, but in the database, thank you for that specification. What I see here is that I can search under cited references. Again, another tool that's specific to this database, but you can find similar ones across other databases. And I can say, who is the author? Let's say I am doing research on a topic and there is somebody who seems to be like the go-to gal. She is writing all the articles. She is the expert. And I want to see not just everything she's written, which is what I can get if I search for her by the author, but I want to see everybody else who's citing her as well. I can put that name in here and it'll show me who else in this database is citing that. Same thing here with the title. If there's an article and I want to see like, oh, this seems like a big deal article, who all is citing this? I want to find where else this can lead me. Remember what we said about letting resources lead you? Put that title into the cited references and you'll see every other article in this collection that cites that article. Good question. Good question. All right. Any other questions?
We have a question.
Okay, so when you're in there and you're searching these databases, well, when I've done it, I'm wondering if there's a way to save preferences for the databases you'd like to always just be searching. And then also, I guess it's a two-part question. On the right side, when you're in an article, there's the opportunity to save it, and then it goes into this folder.
Two excellent questions and they're connected, yes.
Yeah, so when you go into the folder, if you go in right away, they're there, but then if you time out your session, you go back in, they're gone. Is there any way?
Right. And what this all comes back to, and this will answer, I think, both of your questions, is that what you're doing here when you're creating this folder is not attached to any of your login credentials with CSU Pueblo. What this is doing is asking you to, in this case, to create an EBSCO account. You could totally create an EBSCO account. And the fact is that there's a ton of databases we subscribe to that are run by EBSCOhost. If you do that and you sign in, then every time you sign in, you'll be able to access those folders. You can set those preferences. But these are tools within that database. Let's go ahead and I'm going to click on the choose databases here. And I'm going to zoom out a little bit so we can get a better look. This is all of the different EBSCOhost databases to which CSU Pueblo subscribes. So, Social Index is here. That's where we're already in. I could add in the social sciences full text to my search. I could add in Time Magazine archive. I could add in a bunch of different things. I could add in the psychology and behavioral sciences collection. Anything that didn't have its own specific user interface, I could add to this search. And then when I clicked OK, you'll see here now that I'm searching in multiple databases. I could then create and sign in to my EBSCOhost account, use those preferences, save all that stuff to the folder. That's one of the many tools that are available for you within these databases. But keep in mind that you'll want to be able to access the database from the CSU Pueblo Library's website so you can get into it, and then you're creating like your own little account of favorites within. Does that answer your question?
I think so. So you're saying if we utilize that EBSCOhost that we can, it'll allow us to make those our preferred databases that we're always using?
You can go to one of those EBSCOhost databases, create an account here by clicking on sign in, and that will allow you to save those things to the folders, access them again. You can set preferences within the databases. So let's go back and see if it actually lets me see what preferences I can set. So in this case, I can say I want the language, I want the format, I want my different citations. It's been a long time, to be quite honest, since I played around within an EBSCOhost account. So I'm not sure if you can save which databases you want to every single time. But keep in mind that you have to go in through the library's websites to use your CSU Pueblo account to get access to the stuff to begin with. So I honestly, when I go through, I start with one database and then I'll add the other ones. And this is not an account you have to pay for. That is a good question. Someone just dropped into the chat. You are getting access to these databases with your e-account and password through the library. And then this is just an account that you're creating within that database. That's a very good question. It's a little confusing. I wish that each of these publishers didn't have their own accounts that they want you to create as well. But it's like I think if you've ever gone to a magazine's website and clicked on a couple recipes and then they make you create an account before you have access anymore, it's kind of like that. If you want to get access to all of those tools within each of the databases, you have to do that. Good question. Other questions? All right. So,
Quick
yes, I'm
question,
sorry.
my students want to know where they'll be able to access the slides.
I am going to share a link with all of y'all as soon as the session is over. You can also get them at this tiny URL right now. Let me bring that back up. tinyurl.com/MSW CSUP library. And faculty friends, I will be sharing that link as well as a link to the recording of this session after it processes, and a link to the PsycInfo self-paced tutorial as well, all there for you in one place to share it with everyone. So you have an immediate question, you want to get someone on the phone, you can call the research help desk. There is a librarian in the building each day to field those questions. If you have questions about checking things out, that's where circulation is going to come in handy. If you need to renew items, that is who you want to talk to. As I mentioned, interlibrary loan, you can reach out to them directly. And then if you have any quick questions that you need them answered immediately, text or chat are also good options. But this is my email address. And I'm going to go through the library's website one more time before we leave each other today to show you again where to find the databases, where to find the research guides, and where to contact me. But I want you to feel free again to use me as your first stop for help here at the library. And if I'm not the best person to help you out, because I am not an expert on everything, I will refer you to the right person. That's not because I don't want to help you, that's because I want to help you the best as possible. And that means sometimes I will turn to you and say, that's the best question best asked for your professor. They're your content experts. They're the ones who know what the stuff means. I'm your context expert. I can help you get to the information and look for the information. All right, so let's look at the library's homepage one last time before I shut my trap and take last questions. Here is your library homepage. This is your super search box to start your searches at. Advanced search, if we click on that, will take us to those extra search boxes, allow us to put in some of our limiters to start with. It'll look very similar to a lot of the other advanced search that you'll see throughout the databases. If we click on research guides right next to it in the super search box, that'll take us to a listing of all of the research guides by subject. You can scroll through and see what might be the best resource for you, as well as find a little clicky place where you can click on my face and contact me, as well as contact for all of our librarians who each have different specialties and can support you that way. In addition to the subject guides on different research topics, everything from English to history, this is where you can find guides on interlibrary loan, those citation guides, all of that is here in the research guides. And remember, you can look at them by subject, but you can also look by type to see if you need a general overview or if you're looking for a course guide. And then in addition to those research guides that will give you a good idea of which journals and databases might be the best resources for your research, if you go to that databases link, you'll find that full list of all of our databases. Oh, scrolled way too fast there, apologies. And again, be able to sort by the subject, sort by the type, and then find information about each of those databases in your search results. And then click on each one of these titles to get prompted to log in to access your database. So I am going to stop screen sharing for a moment. Any questions about what we've covered, about how you're going to get this information back, about what I can do for you, what's available to you at the library, anything along those lines? I'm happy to do some demonstrations now, address any questions. I'm here for as long as you like.
Got one question.
I have a question. I am not able to access anything because of my net ID not working. Is there a guest login that I could use, short of having someone?
Okay. Were you trying to access the databases?
Yes.
Okay, that is your e-account that you're going to use. And this is, like I said, the little fuzzy point of confusion right now. It's a kind of probably like a good rule of thumb if you try the net ID and that's not working, to try your e-account. I'm going to go back to sharing my screen with y'all for just a moment. Let me just find the right screen. So anytime I click on one of these to access a database, to access an online article in my search results, to go to one of those actual online resources, that is when I'm going to get prompted to log in with my e-account and password. And that's already gone away because I've already logged in. Let me bring up that document very quickly that has the 2 bits of net ID information on them. And so again, this is linked here in the slides as well. And I really wish that the library wasn't the testing ground for this, but we are. All right, so NetID is what you'll use for your library account to request books, to make interlibrary loan requests. If you're going to be using your NetID, you'll first see this little screen here asking if you're with CSU Pueblo or the community. And then you'll see a screen here that says log in with your CSU system NetID. What you should be seeing when you click on one of the databases is this login screen here that says, in my opinion, far too tiny text, use your e-account to log into the resource. So try your e-account instead of your NetID if this is the login screen if you're seeing. And then if there is actually an issue with your NetID, if you're still getting there, then you're going to have to reach out to the help desk because they have the power there. Okay. Goodbye, Savra. Thanks for your time, y'all. Any other questions from the other classes?
Thank you so much, Alexis. That was so
My
awesome.
pleasure. My
Okay.
pleasure.
Detailed, way to go. I didn't think anybody could talk that long like me without stopping, but you did great.
Well, I
Wonderful.
really would prefer to have y'all actually working through some of this, but we'll get through it together. Like I said, I just really hope to give y'all just an idea of what it is for you to expect. Dive in, start doing the research.
Now
I've
let's.
been there for 4 years.
Matt,
sorry.
go ahead.
Go ahead, Jennifer.
I've been there for 4 years and I had no idea about that search, super search. I just like blew my mind right on.
I'm really glad to hear that. Thank you, Jennifer. And the other thing I'll say is I've worked at several university libraries at this point. I've worked with graduate students who've come from community colleges and all sorts of different undergraduate experiences. All of these library databases, they work a little bit differently. And part of that is why I made such an emphasis of like, these are transferable skills, try and work them out. But don't make the assumption that anybody is assuming that you should know that all of this is there. So If you feel like something's missing, you feel like there's like this is, like I said, harder than it should be, give it 10 to 15 minutes and then drop me an email and I'll get back to you as soon as I can.
Thank you so much.
You're very
Appreciate it.
welcome. Any other questions? All right. I am going to end the meeting here, and then I will be sharing this with everybody as soon as it's processed. Thank you for your time. And like I said, do not hesitate to reach out, start your research now, and I will look forward to getting to know more of you one-on-one in the future. Thank you, everyone.